A full moon hangs heavy over a restless sea, signaling the start of a moonlit night where evil is about to open its eyes. A high-performance sports car tears through the coastal darkness, its headlights cutting a sharp path through the shadows. The sole ray of light on the wet road heralds the arrival of a hunter who walks with purpose. Far above the shoreline, the car comes to a halt on the industrial overlook. Sylvester steps out, his long silver hair catching the faint blue light of the evening. He gazes down at the sprawling docks, where the true business of the night is being conducted. Two thugs huddle by a fire, discussing a new batch of illegal drugs brought in by smugglers. They identify the substance as psychedelic moon, a payment given in lieu of cash. Their conversation is interrupted by the silhouette of a tall man carrying a massive, coffin-like case. The thugs are caught off guard, demanding to know where this stranger came from. Ignoring their questions, Sylvester levels a silver handgun directly at a criminal's forehead. The muzzle flashes with holy intensity, painting the warehouse in a spray of gore. The body hits the ground before the sound of the gunshot can even echo through the rafters. The remaining survivor stares in paralyzed shock, his face splattered with the remnants of his companion. Sylvester stands beneath the moon's glow, his gaze as cold and lethal as the weapon in his hand. Across town, a terrified DJ is forced to play at a club where the patrons aren't human. The neon-drenched dance floor hides a predatory feast about to begin. A vampire drops his mask, eyes glowing with a sinister red hunger. He reveals rows of jagged fangs, the true face of a monster in the night. The DJ flinches as the creature looms over her, his presence suffocating. He complains that the music is killing the vibe, demanding something more fitting for a slaughter. In the eyes of these ancient predators, humanity has been demoted to a single status. One vampire holds a victim aloft, bored by the fragility of his food. They see only prey, nothing more and nothing less. A heavy footstep signals a shift in the room's power dynamic. The vampire walks with arrogance, unaware that his time is rapidly running out. The DJ looks on in despair, seeing no escape from the fangs at her throat. The monster leans in close, his hunger becoming impossible to restrain. The club's entrance is suddenly shattered, as if hit by a holy battering ram. The vampire's grip falters as he turns toward the intrusion, sensing a threat. Even monsters have nightmares, and theirs has just walked through the front door. A body is sent hurtling across the room, clearing a path through the neon haze. The vampire pack snarls, their leisure night turning into a battlefield. Sylvester stands in the light of the doorway, leaning casually against his massive weapon case. He flashes a cold, mocking smile, taunting the fanged beasts before him. The lead vampire demands to know who dares to interrupt their feast. A flash of blue energy answers him, a strike that moves faster than the undead eye can follow. Sylvester begins the purge, his silver gun smoking as he expresses a mock sense of pity for his targets. He chides the Jiak Yo clan members for stooping so low as to work with common gangsters. With every step he takes, the ground beneath him is stained with the failure of his enemies. He wonders aloud if their late master would weep for such a pathetic display of might. Recognition finally dawns on the face of the lead vampire as he stares at the hunter. He realizes this is the infamous priest, expelled from the Vatican, the true hunter, Sylvester. Enraged, the vampire vows to decorate the nightclub with Sylvester's blood. Sylvester finds their hospitality lacking, his blue eyes glowing with divine disdain. The air explodes into blue streaks of energy as Sylvester moves with ethereal speed, shredding the pack. A vampire lunges in a desperate final act, but its jaws find only the cold sting of death. In a massive crescent of blue light, Sylvester performs the holy ceremony of returning them all to dust. He stands alone amidst the wreckage, disappointed by the lack of useful information. He stares down the last monster standing, mocking the very idea that a creature of the dark could ever kill him. The white-haired warrior stares down his prey with absolute contempt. To him, this creature is nothing more than a useless mongrel. Enraged, the vampire screams for silence and launches himself forward. His body begins to warp under the pressure of his own bloodlust. The protagonist parries with a blindingly fast spin of his blade. The air hums with the sound of steel cutting through the dark. Muzzle flashes light up the room as the sword-gun hybrid unleashes a barrage. Every shot is calculated to maximize pain. The vampire is blown back, his limbs extending in a grotesque attempt to find footing. He is losing his humanity by the second. A massive kinetic slash tears through the sanctuary, leaving a trail of purple light. The sheer force of the impact vibrates through the floor. The warrior pauses, observing the creature's resilience. It seems this mongrel is one of the rare few capable of true mutation. A mutated, oversized claw swipes downward with lethal intent. The protagonist narrowly avoids being crushed into the tiles. Cold iron meets desperate flesh as the barrel is leveled at the beast's chest. Point-blank range is where the protagonist does his best work. A violent explosion of energy erupts as the trigger is pulled. The vampire's torso is lit up by a blinding, searing white light. Even through the carnage, the warrior's eyes remain calm and analytical. He is looking for the core, the source of the regeneration. A high-impact kick combined with a downward slash sends the creature crashing into the ground. The floor buckles under the weight of the beast. The vampire gasps, blood spilling from his lips as his physical form fails. The mutation is taking a heavy toll on his internal organs. A final, concentrated burst of power levels the immediate area. Dust and debris fill the air as the protagonist stands victorious. The feral vampire lies broken in the ruins of the hideout. He is defeated, but the protagonist knows the job isn't finished yet. Could you hold back a little? A voice echoes from the shadows. The warrior turns to see a familiar face entering the fray. Jiang Jun, the vampire hunter, is already busy at work near a fallen victim. He's here to ensure no trace of the infection remains. Jiang Jun complains that overkilling the targets leaves no blood to collect. It's a messy business, but someone has to do it. The protagonist asks for his usual contact, but Jiang Jun explains he's the substitute for today. The logistics of hunting are getting more complicated. They confirm the connection between the Jiak clan and the local gangs. This hideout was more than just a warehouse, it was a breeding ground. Surveying the massive industrial space, it's clear why the vampires chose it. It's an ideal spawning sanctuary, hidden from the public eye. Quit your yapping and finish your work, the protagonist growls. In the shadows, a mutated hand begins to twitch with unnatural life. A crimson eye snaps open within the darkness of the ruins. The mutation wasn't fully neutralized, the beast is waking up. The protagonist's instincts flare as he senses the movement behind him. He turns with mechanical precision toward the threat. He levels his weapon instantly, the hammer clicking into place. There will be no second chances for this creature. The creature leaps across the high rafters, trying to escape into the city night. It moves with a speed that defies its broken body. The warrior locks his gaze onto the target through the sights of his gun. He doesn't miss, and he doesn't hesitate. Successive shots tear into the fleeing vampire's back. Blood sprays against the industrial backdrop as the beast is hammered by lead. The vampire falls from the heights, trailing black ichor behind him. He is plummeting toward the concrete below. The empty loading bay waits silently for the impact. For a split second, the urban night is eerily still. The creature hits the ground with a sickening thud, cracking the pavement. Dust clouds billow out from the impact site. Despite the fall, the mutant scrambles away into the fog. It seems even death is having a hard time catching up to him. The protagonist lowers his gun, watching the creature disappear. Jiang Jun catches up, wondering why he's letting it run. Jiang Jun sighs, assuming the cleanup will be his responsibility. He figures the beast will die of its injuries soon enough anyway. The warrior turns a freezing glare toward the hunter. He doesn't appreciate the lack of professionalism in such a dangerous situation. He warns Jiang Jun that if he keeps talking like that, he'll be the next one to die. The hunter just waves it off with a smirk. "I'll do my best to clean up," Jiang Jun promises with a thumb up. He knows the protagonist's threats are mostly just his personality. The protagonist walks away toward the harbor, leaving the mess behind. The lighthouse flashes in the distance, a lonely beacon. He reflects on the night's events, his brow furrowed. Things are becoming far more complicated than he initially anticipated. The feralization was already deep in progress, meaning the transformation is accelerating. The lineage is evolving faster than the hunters. Standing under the full moon, he stares out at the city. The calm is temporary, and something much larger is beginning to move. A sudden burst of light and sound shatters the silence of the highway. The tranquility of the night is officially over. A gang of bikers roars through the streets, their engines screaming. They weave through traffic with a reckless disregard for life. Police sirens wail behind them, trying to maintain order. The blue and red lights reflect off the wet asphalt in a chaotic dance. One of the bikers laughs manically, goading the officers to try and catch them. They aren't just speeding, they are looking for trouble. A lone rider leads the pack, leaning low into the turn. Every movement is fluid, professional, and dangerous. Beneath the helmet, his eyes are cold and focused on the path ahead. Tonight, a new sacrifice will be made under the moonlight. It was a life without any real worries, framed in the soft glow of a perfect memory. A business father, a stay-at-home mother, a model student brother, and a faithful dog named Jean Dark. But perfection is just a facade waiting for the first crack to appear. Speed is the only way to outrun the silence. The neon-soaked streets become a playground for those desperate to feel alive. We race because there's nothing else to do. Hidden behind the visor, Han Segun watches the world blur into a streak of light. The desire to escape the ordinary was always there, simmering just beneath the surface. The other riders are panicking. Someone is trailing them too closely. They can't handle the heat. The tension boils over as they realize they're being followed. How do we shake him off? Segun stays silent, focusing on the roar of his engine. They're all too predictable. He grips the throttle tight. If you only stick to the set path, you'll never find the exit. The group thunder down the highway, but Segun is looking for a different angle. He suddenly swerves, breaking the formation and heading toward the edge of the overpass. With a sudden burst of speed, he launches himself off the ramp and into the night air. The others can only watch in disbelief as he takes the plunge. What the hell is he doing? The descent feels like an eternity. Gravity is the only thing that's real in this moment. He closes his eyes for a split second, savoring the absolute freedom of the fall. The tires hit the pavement with a jarring impact, sparks flying as he sticks the landing. He skids to a halt, the sound of the chase fading into the distance. The flashing lights of the police are far away now. He's escaped once again. Removing his helmet, he takes a breath of cold night air. The deviation was a success. He wipes the sweat from his brow. The rush is already beginning to fade. The wheels spin as he prepares to head back to the reality he despises. Riding was his only way to escape a mundane life stuck in a rut. His only true deviation. He arrives at the quiet suburban home. Everything looks exactly as he left it. He walks toward the entrance, the silence of the neighborhood feeling unnaturally heavy. Jean Dark is quiet today. Normally she'd be barking at the gate. He steps inside the dark house. I'm Ho. A sickening stench hits him instantly. It smells like rotting fish and iron. His pupils dilate. Something is fundamentally wrong in the darkness. His foot lands in something wet and viscous. The floor is covered in fluid. Blood, it's everywhere. The hallway has become a slaughterhouse. He stands in the doorway, paralyzed as the horror of the scene begins to register. The stench of death is overwhelming. He can barely keep himself from gagging. In the darkness of the entryway, a shadow looms. Some owner, some thingy's definitely inside. He reaches out, his hand trembling as he searches for any kind of weapon. He grabs a metal rod, calling out for his parents and brother with a voice that cracks. A massive, hulking shadow rises against the light. This isn't human. The beast lunges with terrifying speed, its weight pinning Segun against the wall. Gnarled teeth and glowing red eyes. The creature snarls, its breath hot and foul. He struggles to keep the metal bar between himself and the monster's snapping jaws. Blood spatters across his face as the realization begins to sink in. This thing is familiar. He throws the beast off and scrambles for better footing. It's a fight for survival now. He assumes a defensive stance, the iron pipe ready to strike at the next opening. The monster stalks him, its muscles rippling under a coat of matted, bloody fur. It charges again, but Segun is ready this time, swinging with every ounce of his adrenaline. The pipe connects with a sickening crunch. The beast howls in pain as its blood sprays the walls. He's exhausted and terrified, but the monster won't stay down. His mind flashes back to a happy golden retriever. Don't tell me, Jean Dark. He delivers a final, brutal strike that ends the creature's life, leaving its body cooling on the floor. Behind the dead beast, he sees the bodies of his parents. The ordinary life is truly gone. His stomach turns as the shock finally overrides his survival instinct. He retches violently. He collapses to his knees. Jean Dark, his mom, his dad, all gone in an instant. Tears mix with the blood on his face. What the hell happened in our house? He stays there for a long time, the weight of the silence becoming unbearable. A sound from above catches his attention. The second floor, something is still here. He looks back at the hallway, his grief turning into a cold, sharp resolve. He remembers, his father kept a shotgun in the study, he needs more than a pipe. He finds his brother in the study, slumped against the shelves with the gun still in hand. The model student tried to fight, he wasn't fast enough. Segun gently takes the shotgun from his brother's cold grip. He whispers an apology, if only he had come home a little earlier. He holds his brother one last time, the regret tearing through him like a blade. The reflection in a glass shard shows a man who has lost everything. He loads a fresh shell into the chamber. The hunt begins now. He walks back into the hall, the weight of the gun providing a grim comfort. The barrel is still warm. His brother definitely used the weapon to fight back. The question haunts him, why didn't the killer take the gun? To them, it must be a toy. He grips the stock until his knuckles turn white. You think I can't kill you? He approaches the base of the stairs, peering into the pitch-black upper level. Every step up the wooden stairs creaks like a death knell. He should have realized it then. Common sense has no place here. The reality of what's waiting for him is impossible. He catches a glimpse of a figure. His eyes go wide as he realizes the sheer scale of the threat. A pale, elongated foot steps into the light. It's too steady, too predatory. He levels the shotgun, aiming for the heart of the darkness. A clawed hand grips the doorframe, wood splintering under its inhuman strength. The air turns freezing. Segun stares up at the true face of the nightmare. From the shadows, an existence beyond common sense reveals itself. The moon has fallen. Sometimes, life brings moments where you are left completely lost for words. Like meeting someone who occupies a completely different world from your own. Or hearing a joke that fails to land, leaving an awkward silence. Or even staring at a beautiful, fleeting sunset that signals the end of the day. In those moments, the mind simply stops processing reality. But the silence I feel right now is born from a completely different kind of terror. My family is gone, murdered in the very place we called home. My brother tried to fight back with this shotgun, but he failed. With a deafening blast, I let the weapon speak for my rage. I must hunt the beast that did this, before it claims me too. The monster lunged at me with his claw. I am thrown backward, losing my footing entirely. Tumbling down the cold stairs, the weapon slips from my grasp. Pain flares through my body, blinding my senses. My shoulder is dislocated, screams locked in my throat. Fleeing was an option, a logical choice for survival. But my body refuses to run from the nightmare. The predator towers over me, a literal demon of the night. I could have called for help, screamed for the police, or begged the neighbors. Yet when absolute terror strikes, logical paths simply vanish. The only thought remaining in my mind was to eradicate this monster. Tears of grief and rage mix on my face as I steady my aim. It lunges forward, a blur of fangs and unnatural speed. Its roar vibrates in my chest, a herald of my impending death. I pull the trigger, pouring all my hatred into a single shot. The blast connects, shredding flesh and drawing dark blood. But the creature's eyes flare with unyielding malice. The weapon is ripped from my hands, leaving me completely defenseless. In that split second, I realize the sheer gulf in our power. It rises again, unbothered by the mortal wound. The monster grabs me, squeezing the last remnants of breath from my lungs. Lifted off the ground, I look into the face of my executioner. I apologize to my family silently. I couldn't even avenge them. Its maw opens wide to deliver the final, killing blow. But an unexpected flash of energy rips through the darkness. The beast is suddenly pinned, its dominance shattered in an instant. Calm, heavy footsteps echo through the blood-soaked hallway. The monster turns, sensing a predator far more dangerous than itself. A silver handgun glints in the dim light. Rapid gunfire tears the creature apart with surgical precision. I look up through fading vision, wondering who has intervened. The beast whimpers, its reign of terror cut short. With a single blinding slash of a blade, the monster is silenced forever. The savior looks down, his expression cold and devoid of pity. He speaks of silent departures, as if death were a mere inconvenience. He stands over me, an enigmatic figure cloaked in the shadows of the night. He mutters ancient words about sinners and the lack of righteousness on earth. He demands that I resent him, offering no comfort to a dying survivor. His eyes burn with a piercing, unnatural blue light. His gaze falls upon the discarded shotgun lying on the bloody floor. I struggle to hold onto consciousness as he addresses me. He asks if the weapon belongs to me. As our eyes lock, the world around me begins to blur and fade into a quiet darkness. He watches me, perhaps evaluating my resolve or my utility. He decides that I am too valuable to simply be left to die. My mundane, quiet life is shattered completely. Flashing sirens and shouting voices break the morning silence outside. The police discover the carnage and the weapon that started my descent. They ask if I can hear them, trying to pull me back to reality. An officer calls out, announcing the discovery of a sole survivor. I whisper the names of my lost family, realizing I am truly alone. The ordinary boy who raced cars to escape boredom is dead. My stifling wish for deviation has come true in the most horrific way possible. The news cycle never stops, especially when there is blood in the water and a survivor who doesn't fit the script. They call it the mysterious case of a family torn apart by their own pet, a story too strange for most to believe. The authorities found the shotgun at the scene, the only weapon the survivor used to face the nightmare. The rumors grew like rot, painting my brother as a jealous genius who finally snapped under the pressure. People whispered that I was just a delinquent, a thug on a bike who was bound to end up in trouble. Every camera lens felt like a predatory eye, waiting for me to crack for the sake of a front-page story. The world demanded answers I didn't want to give, for things I barely understood myself. A sea of faces pressed against me, their voices a cacophony of accusations and empty curiosity. They searched for a hidden motive in the wreckage of my life, as if my grief were just a puzzle to be solved. I felt like an animal being poked and prodded, trapped in a cage of light and noise. But beneath the flashbulbs, the true horror was still lurking, waiting to tear through the fabric of my reality. The weight of the truth felt like it was drowning me in a sea of blood and static. I saw them in my dreamsome army of beasts with glowing red eyes, the true architects of my ruin. No, it couldn't be real. I refused to let the darkness take hold of me again. I ran until my lungs burned, trying to leave the screams of my family behind in that house. I fled from a shadow I couldn't name, a terror that felt like it had been part of my life all along. I wanted to forget the way the air smelled of iron, and the way the shadows moved on their own. It was easier to pretend it was all a nightmare than to face the fact that my world was gone. When the silence finally returned, I found myself surrounded by the clinical coldness of the investigators. The monster was gone, leaving only the stains of its existence on my skin. I looked at my hands, expecting to see the wounds, but they were whole, as if the battle had never happened. The memory began to fracture, the pain becoming a blur that I tried to bury deep inside. I lay there in the cold, a survivor who had lost the very thing he was supposed to protect. The image of the creature haunted the corners of my mind, a jagged tooth in a sea of gray. And then there was him, the man who stood in the center of the storm, watching with eyes that had seen too much. The chalk outlines were the only maps left to me, marking the places where my life ended. The public's obsession didn't fade, it only became a dull roar in the background of my isolation. I moved through the city like a ghost, invisible to the people who only knew me as a headline. The house was a mausoleum of memories I couldn't escape, even when the doors were locked. There was nowhere left to hide, not when the truth was etched into my very soul. The only peace I could find was in the speed of my machine, cutting through the heavy night air. I had to find him. I had to know if what I saw was real or if I had truly lost my mind. The engine's roar was the only thing that could drown out the voices in my head. I followed the trail of whispers and sightings, a hunter seeking a phantom. The helmet came off, but the feeling of being watched never left me. The city stretched out below like a carpet of diamonds, hiding the monsters in its crevices. I felt a presence nearby, a chill that had nothing to do with the night wind. There he was, standing on the edge of the world as if he belonged to the stars. He was exactly as I remembered, a pillar of cold indifference against the night sky. His gaze was a sharp blade, cutting through my defenses before I could even speak. He moved with a predatory grace that made my instincts scream for me to run. I didn't run this time, I charged forward, fueled by a desperation that outweighed my fear. I demanded the truth that had been denied to me by the world and my own memory. I recognized him from that night, the one who stood over the carnage while I bled. I shouted the questions that had been burning in my chest since the moment my life shattered. His voice was like ice, commanding a silence that I couldn't help but obey. The power he radiated was suffocating, a reminder of how small I really was. He spoke of imagination and the limits of human understanding, mocking my confusion. I laughed, a jagged sound that bordered on madness, as I whispered the word I was afraid to say. I asked if it was a vampire, a creature of myth made flesh in the middle of a modern city. His confirmation was a simple word that changed everything, turning my nightmares into history. He didn't waste time with comfort. He went straight to the heart of the rot that was now part of me. He asked if I had tasted the blood, as if it were a casual question about the weather. The memory of the spray hit me with hot, metallic tang of the monster's life force. A darkness flared within me, a hunger I hadn't realized was gnawing at my core. He told me my arm hadn't just healed, he had been the one to put the broken pieces back together. The logic of my world crumbled, replaced by a reality where the impossible was common. I wondered how many more of them were out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting to feed. He told me to go back to my life, as if I could simply step back into a skin that no longer fit. The rage bubbled up, a volcanic heat that threatened to consume my every thought. Normalcy was a lie, a thin veil over a world of slaughter that he expected me to ignore. I screamed at the unfairness of it all, my voice breaking under the weight of my loss. He silenced me with a grip that felt like iron, forcing me to face the harsh reality of my situation. He lifted me as if I were nothing, a child throwing a tantrum in the face of a god. The shadows pooled around him, revealing the true depth of the power he wielded. He told me to stop whining, for I was not the only one to be touched by the tragedy of the night. I looked into his eyes and saw a void that mirrored my own, a hollow space where a soul used to be. He let me go, leaving me to grapple with the choice between survival and surrender. I could still see them, monsters that took my parents' and my brother's future. He watched me with a cold curiosity, waiting to see if I would break or become something else. I made my choice then, a vow of blood and fire that would guide me until my last breath. If the world was filled with monsters, then I would become the thing that monsters feared. He looked at me with a spark of interest, acknowledging the fire he had just ignited. The moon hung high, a cold witness to the birth of a hunter in a world of prey. Prey. The bell above the door chimed, a lonely sound that echoed through the empty cafe like a final warning. You kept us waiting. In this line of work, tardiness is often confused with death. Sylvester stepped into the light, his presence heavy with the weight of centuries-old secrets and the scent of gunpowder. Names are a luxury we cannot afford. Do not call me that in the open or anywhere else. Is this the one? The boy who walked through the valley of death and decided he liked the view. The lead went cold. Our prey has already fled across the border, leaving us with nothing but ashes and questions. So we've failed before we've even begun. A year of planning and the beast escapes into the night. Why did you bring this child here? He hasn't even learned how to mourn, let alone how to kill. He may look like a student, but the normalcy died in his eyes the moment his family's blood hit the floor. You've seen them now. They aren't legends, they are the natural end of the food chain. A human body is just a collection of fragile bones and soft tissue. Against a vampire, we are merely glass waiting to shatter. They will tear through your muscles and snap your spirit before you can even draw a breath. This is our only hope, the psychedelic moon. It is the blood of the enemy, synthesized into a tool for the desperate. It will numb the pain and grant you a strength that mocks the laws of nature. But every moment of power burns a month of your life. It is a slow suicide for the sake of a moment's victory. Consume too much, and the monster inside won't just be a feeling anymore. You will become the very thing you hate. Knowing that there is no path back to your old life, do you still wish to step into the dark? There is no reality for me to return to. That world was burned down while I watched. The decision was made for me the night I picked up the shotgun. I am already gone. Fool, this isn't a game of resolve. You take that now and you'll die before the sun rises. Ha ha ha, such impatience. At least he has the fire, most people just wait to be eaten. Song Diakyon. I've been training the damned for longer than you've been alive, kid. He's yours now. Teach him how to survive, or at least how to die with some dignity. The world of the moon is a heavy burden. Prepare yourself for a life that doesn't include mercy. The trail leads to Mexico. We depart immediately to ensure the trail doesn't go cold again. Wait, you're leaving. After dragging me into this, you're just handing me off to a stranger. Our paths have diverged. If you want to follow, you'll have to earn your place among the hunters. Ridiculous child, survival is the only loyalty we recognize. Don't let me down. He's too thin. He looks like he'll break under the first heavy pack you give him. I don't need to be strong for you. I only need to be strong enough to kill the things that stole my life. Then welcome to your new home. May the mad moon guide your hand, Han Segun. 1 year later, the Benia Club shone with a false brilliance, hiding the rot that festered within its walls. The elite of the underworld gathered, their expensive cars a testament to the blood money they harvested daily. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing the world of shadows from the prying eyes of the innocent. Shin Yonghu arrived, a man whose reputation for brutality was only matched by his greed. The men bowed low, their respect born of fear for the man who controlled their fates. I told you to call me Sunbi. We are legitimate businessmen now, not street thugs. Yes, of course, my apologies, the transition to the new market has been complicated. Why have you pulled me away from my duties? There better be a good reason for this interruption. There is a guest in the arena. He's been asking for you, and our security couldn't stop him. The dance floor was littered with the bodies of the fallen, a silent witness to a sudden and violent storm. A lone figure stood amidst the carnage, his back to the world as if the violence meant nothing to him. You let a single boy dismantle my best fighters. You're even more incompetent than I thought. He's not human, Sunbi. He moved faster than we could see. It was like fighting a ghost. Is this the brat? The one who's been hitting our stash houses and leaving no witnesses? He looks like he should be in school, not standing in the middle of a war zone. Are you the one in charge here? Or do I have to break a few more ribs to find someone who matters? You have a lot of nerve coming into my club and making demands. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are. You're the one who owes me what I paid for. A thug, that's a funny word coming from a man who uses tailored suits to hide his crimes. I'm here because your subordinates have a very poor memory when it comes to prepaid orders. 5 million won in cash. That was the down payment for my equipment, and I'm still empty-handed. Wait, what are you talking about? My men don't make mistakes with that much money. Did you try to pocket his money and keep the goods? Answer me before I lose my temper. I want the Dragonov, the Tokarev, and the AK-47, and I want them before I start getting bored. You think 5 million won buys you a military arsenal? You're even more insane than you are fast. I know your margins. I know exactly how much those Russian imports cost you on the black market. I also know about the Shitdong gang's recent attempts to move into the narcotics trade. You should be very careful with what you claim to know. People die for much less. I'm done talking to this brat. Call the police, report a disturbance, and let them deal with him. Wait, is that a good idea? I'm not sure you want the authorities poking around your inventory right now. I could tell them that your gang isn't just selling guns anymore, but something much more addictive. That's enough, boys. Show him what happens to people who stick their noses where they don't belong. Cut him into pieces. I want his arrogant head mounted on my wall before the night is over. They stood there in their expensive suits, paralyzed by the sight of someone who didn't fear their posturing. The arrogance was slipping, replaced by the realization that they were out of their depth. The order to kill was spat out like a curse. For men who made their living on intimidation, the sight of a student staring them down was an insult that could only be washed away in blood. The circle closed in, the rhythmic thud of their weapons against their palms serving as the only warning I would receive. I let my body take over, the muscles remembering every lesson learned in the dark. My pulse slowed as the world began to move in predictable patterns. The first one committed the fatal error of leading with his shoulder, leaving a window of opportunity I had no intention of wasting. The dance was short and brutal. Every movement was stripped of wasted effort, turning their superior numbers into a chaotic mess of tangled limbs and failed strikes. A sharp, focused impact connected with the second attacker's jaw, cutting his scream short before it could even begin. I drove through him, using the momentum to maintain my balance while the sound of the blow echoed through the empty hall. I didn't stop to admire the work. There was no room for pride in a fight for survival, only the next target. Another lunged from the side, but his movements were sluggish compared to the creatures I had already faced. I countered his momentum, using his own weight to drive him into the floor. The fight was over before the first drop of sweat hit the ground. Their leader's face was a masterpiece of disbelief. He had expected a victim, not a predator. He looked at his fallen men, then back at me. He had lost the gamble the moment he decided to entertain my arrival. I walked toward him, the sound of my boots against the tiles marking the rhythm of his mounting dread. There was no escape for him now. He was cornered in a world of his own making, and I was the bill collector. His voice cracked as he asked the only question left to him. He was desperate for a way out that didn't end with him on the floor. I gave him my term's military-grade hardware for the mess he had caused. A Dragunov, a Tokarev, and an AK-47. I had no interest in half-measures. He sputtered about the impossibility of the request, trying to hide his fear behind the logistics of the black market. I gave him the location and the time. Tomorrow, 8 in the evening. There was no room for negotiation in my world anymore. I turned my back on him, leaving him to contemplate the fact that his survival was now tied to his ability to follow my orders. His men whispered about the monster I had become, wondering how a human could possess such terrifying efficiency. He struck his subordinate for the lack of respect, a desperate attempt to regain control over a situation he had already lost. He knew he had to call in the reinforcements. There was a higher power he served, one that wouldn't tolerate this level of failure. The industrial outskirts were bathed in the sickly orange glow of a setting sun, a fitting backdrop for the business of blood. The life force of the city's underbelly was stored in plastic bags, graded and sorted by its potential to turn a man into a god or a corpse. The old man spat at the quality of the recent harvest. It seemed the vampires were becoming as weak and diluted as the humans they preyed upon. Ju looked at me with the eyes of someone who had seen thousands like me come and go, most of them ending up as nothing more than stains on the pavement. He suspected I had been rough with his equipment again. He didn't understand that for me, everything was just a tool to be used until it broke. He told me to take the world seriously, or it would swallow me whole without even needing to chew. I pushed the cash across the table. I wasn't here for a lecture on the philosophy of blood, only for the means to shed more of it. He brought up the name of another victim. It seemed the leeches were busy lately, leaving a trail of broken families in their wake. I brushed it off. Mourning was a luxury I had burned long ago along with my childhood home. Ju watched me go, his expression softening for just a fraction of a second. He knew the path I was on had no exit strategy. I walked back into the light, the weight of the new weapons deal already pressing down on my shoulders. He was waiting for me outside, the only person left who still looked at me as something other than a weapon. He chided me for being late, his concern a ghost of a life I could no longer inhabit. I couldn't meet his gaze. If he saw what was in my eyes, he would know that the kid he once knew was already dead. I asked the question that had been eating at me. I was tired of being a student. I wanted to be the hunter. He shut me down immediately. He saw the impatience as a death sentence, a lack of discipline that would get me killed before I reached the first nest. I told him I was fine. I lied. The itch under my skin was becoming a roar that only the sound of gunfire could quiet. He relented just enough to acknowledge my progress, but his warning remained. The monsters weren't the only things to fear. I asked him what I should do if a human stood in my way. I needed to know where the line was drawn. His answer was simple, terrifyingly devoid of morality. In this war, there were only those who were with you and those who were in the way. He pulled me into a rough embrace, a reminder of the strength I still lacked and the loyalty he still expected. He promised to beat the hesitation out of me. I hoped he was strong enough to keep that promise. The city held its breath as the appointed hour arrived. The quiet was heavy, pregnant with the violence yet to come. Uito's skyscrapers loomed overhead like tombstone monuments to greed and corporate indifference. They were waiting for me in the bowels of the parking lot. The shadow of their black SUVs hid the true nature of the men who stood beside them. They complained about the indignity of their mission. They saw themselves as superior beings, and being used as muscle for a human was a bitter pill to swallow. Their transformation hadn't erased their debts. They were still tied to the hierarchy of the gang, bound by a loyalty that was as cold as their blood. They argued about the past, about the failures that had led them to this dark corner of the city. They didn't notice the approach of their doom. The debate ended the moment the first fire extinguisher shattered the glass, sending a rain of shards into the interior of their safe haven. The ambush they expected had been turned back upon them with surgical precision. Then came the light. A flash grenade turned the darkness into a blinding void, stripping away the supernatural senses they relied upon. I stood in the center of the wreckage, my bike a silent witness to the carnage. They had brought numbers, but I had brought a plan. I stepped over the bodies of the lesser leeches, heading toward the only two who still remained standing. They were different. The red in their eyes wasn't just a reflection, it was a hunger that had been nurtured by decades of killing. The lead vampire mocked my efforts. He knew the deal was a lie from the start, a trap set to lure me out into the open. I let him talk. His confidence was based on the assumption that I was still human enough to care about the odds. He thought I came for the guns. He didn't realize that the weapons I truly needed were already standing right in front of me. I told them exactly what I thought of their hierarchy. They were just bullies with better teeth, waiting for someone with enough spite to knock them out. I made them a new offer. I would take their fangs as payment instead. It was a fair trade for the lives they had already stolen. The Sangdong gang is the target. They are the harbor for the rats that took everything from me. Sylvester doesn't just train me, he tests the limits of my humanity. Every blow is a lesson in survival that I cannot afford to fail. He says my movements are still too honest. If I can't learn to surprise my mentor, I'll never stand a chance against a true vampire. Raw strength isn't enough when you're fighting creatures that laugh at the concept of death. I have to be faster. I have to transform into the thing that haunts their nightmares. The air leaves my lungs, but the rage stays rooted deep within. It's the only thing keeping my body standing. A moment of reprieve. He acknowledges my growth, but his praise feels more like a grim warning of what's to come. Sylvester's title as the hunter of true vampires isn't just for show. He's the shadow that even the oldest monsters fear. He speaks of the Jiakayo, a name that carries the heavy weight of a fallen bloodline. Killing a true vampire isn't just a physical feat, it's the complete erasure of a godlike existence from this world. My hands tremble not from fear, but from the sudden realization of how high the mountain really is. A power level that defies comprehension. They are walking disasters that have lived for centuries. Regeneration so fast that even the sun cannot burn them away. They are the apex predators, and I am currently just their prey. The Jiakayo clan was once the crown jewel of their kind. Proud, ancient, and utterly ruthless. And yet they were broken, disintegrated by the actions of a single man. If the head is cut off, the body flails. The survivors are desperate, looking for any way to restore their king. They hide among human filth, using gangs as shields while they search for the traces of their fallen lord. They want to inherit that power. They want to bring back the era where blood flowed freely through the streets. To them, I am just a nuisance, a fly to be swatted while they chase the ghosts of their past glory. But they underestimate the sheer value of a human's spite. The warning comes far too late. The hunt has already begun, and I have chosen to be the bait. Sylvester warns me not to act recklessly. But my life turned into a living hell the moment my family's blood stained the floor. The Esquire is the successor. Even a dying clan still has fangs that can tear a man apart. If I become their primary target, there will be no more peace. Only the endless, cold dance of death until one of us is dust. The roar of the engine is the only voice I have left in this dark tunnel. The monster lunges, expecting a helpless victim, but I am the architect of its demise. He thinks he can corner me in the shadows. He doesn't realize that the darkness has been my only home for months. The boss watches from a distance, a cold spectator to the carnage he has unleashed upon the world. The Esquire's pride is his greatest weakness. He wants to prove his worth by tearing me apart with his own hands. He looks at me like I'm a toy that won't break in the way he expects. His hunger has completely clouded his judgment. He commands his master to wait while he finishes his meal. Steel bites into the cold air as I weave through his reach. He finally feels the sharp sting of a human who refuses to die quietly. The tires scream against the wet pavement, a mechanical howl that matches the fury in my chest. Every turn is a gamble with my life. Every slide is a silent prayer to a god I no longer believe in. He thinks he's seeing the pattern. He thinks he's finally solved the puzzle of my frantic movements. He mocks me, believing a motorcycle is too clumsy a tool for a duel to the death. He's coming for the kill now. He believes this is the final stop for me. The world slows down to a crawl when the blood starts to boil over. The blade is drawn not out of desperation, but to bait the very strike he's about to make. I am close enough to smell the rot of his breath and feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. A calculated miss. I need him to believe that he has the upper hand in this struggle. He boasts about predicting my every move. He's already celebrating a victory that hasn't happened. A shallow cut leads to a desperate scramble. He's enjoying the sport of the hunt far too much. He catches the blade with ease, his strength dwarfing mine. The metal groans under his unnatural grip. The sword snaps like fragile glass, a weapon of man failing against the hide of a demon. Curse this cheap steel. It was never truly meant for a war like this. He laughs, the sound of a predator who has finally cornered its long-awaited meal. He thinks I'm defenseless. He thinks the broken hilt in my hand is the last of my resolve. His shadow falls over me like a shroud. The end seems certain to any who would watch. But the light in his eyes suddenly flickers. He's realized something far too late to change it. His master's warning was correct. I am not the one who should be afraid in this encounter. I've spent millions on this specialized gear. Not for the sake of fashion, but for the one singular moment where it truly matters. The trap is finally sprung. My hand finds the grip of his throat with unerring precision. This was never a sword fight. The blade was merely a distraction for the real threat. These gloves are the true tools of a professional executioner. They carry the weight of 1,000,000 worth of engineering. Pure fear, I can finally see it in his eyes. The realization that he is the one trapped in the cage. I didn't come here to play games. I came here to balance the scales of my very soul. The impact vibrates through my entire being. Vengeance delivered in a single crushing pulse. The master watches from his car, his composure finally starting to crack under the pressure. One down. The blood pooling on the floor is a testament to the fact that even they can bleed. I can't help but smile. It's the first time I've truly felt alive since the day of the funeral. He asks about my technology. He's curious about the human tools that just humbled his kin. He thinks he knows why I'm here. He thinks he can rationalize the hatred that burns inside me. He wants an explanation for my persistence. He wants to understand my business. My business is simple. It's the only trade I have left to practice in this world. If you understand what I'm after, then stop wasting your breath and come get it. He scoffs, analyzing my style as if it were nothing more than a game of chess. He thinks my broken blade makes me weak. He thinks he's finally found the flaw in my defense. He blocks the obvious strike with arrogant ease, still playing with his food like a bored cat. All or nothing. This is the only way a human can hope to kill a monster. I don't need a sword when I have a lead-spitting god in my hand. The muzzle flash tears through the darkness, ending the conversation. The realization hits his brain at the exact same speed as the bullet. The light fades from his eyes. The pride of the Gyokyo clan is extinguished in a sudden spray of red. I told you from the very start, I wasn't here for a conversation or an explanation. I came for your head, and I always make sure to finish my business.